All right, welcome to Mine Explorers, where we have another special guest, David Boardman, who is the founder and CEO of Stockpile Reports and EveryPoint. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Stuart. Great to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversations.
Yeah, we've had some great conversations in the past. We went to the Ag Nexus conference together two
It was a
years in a
lot of
row
fun.
now, and
Hmm.
we were on a panel together talking about AI and technology and aggregates and
It was
some of the work you're
amazing.
doing. So it's good to kind of get into a setting where we can sit down and talk a little bit more and dig a little bit deeper into some of the work that you've been doing and some of the stuff we're working on and the intersection of that. So
Yeah,
excited to have you
let's do
on.
it. Yeah, that Ag Nexus panel was fantastic, and you put a lot of work into that. Getting Aggie, if people didn't see it, they should go find the video where we actually had an AI agent on the panel that you put together. She was awesome. I tell everyone about that panel. That was one of my highlights of the year.
Yeah,
Being on a
no, it was.
panel with an AI agent, along with getting an AI Christmas card this year.
Oh,
You
really?
see, it's coming. Yeah, it totally fooled me. Somebody sent a card, and we thought, oh, wow, look how nice their house is decorated and this and that. And then we found out like a week later that it was a real picture of their kids, but then they had done an AI background.
Ah,
Uh, so I got my first AI Christmas card this year. So between
yeah.
being on a AI panel and getting an AI Christmas card, yeah, I guess it's happening, huh?
It's happening. It's everywhere now. I use Gemini a lot on the computer to do research, and we do a lot
Hmm.
of market analysis studies and stuff, and it's really helpful to check numbers, poke holes in some of the stuff we've done. But I finally pulled up AI, the Gemini on my phone last night, where you can use the camera feature and it'll actually, you can ask it about things you're looking at. And I'm
Isn't that
putting
great?
together one of those little book nooks, and the instructions are in Chinese, and there was a symbol on there that I had no idea what it meant. And so I was able to actually have the AI and go, what's this symbol mean? And it actually highlighted the symbol and said, do you mean this symbol? And I was like, yeah, that symbol. And it's like, given the context, let me see the rest of the page. And so I zoomed out, let it see the rest of the page. It's like, I think it probably means this. And it ended up working out. But the fact that it could actually guide me and say, hey, can I see more of this? And can you move
Hmm.
around? Like, it was like having somebody else on the other end of the phone. It was crazy.
That's a great story. I love that. And that's a great segue a little bit to what has been our vision and motivation all along was seeing this when we started this business 14 years ago, that every point on the planet, that's where every point comes from, will be digitized every second of every day from trillions of images.
Yep.
And we've always had that vision that every point knows. Like if you've ever seen any of our promotional videos, we have that notion of every point knows. It knows when the tread on your tires of your front loader are running low, right? It knows when the sag on your dozer on the treads is hanging low. It knows when you're not producing to plan, right? And people thought we were crazy. We tell these stories and we showed that video years ago. But that's what it's all about. And I love your example because, people are going to be walking into a mine, onto a quarry, whatever it is, and they're going to be wearing cameras, they're going to be holding cameras, right? And they're going to get help. They're going to get information and assistance, just like you did on that Chinese symbol. Trust me, when I walk onto a quarry, everything's Chinese because I'm a software guy. I've
Yep.
been learning the most I can over the last 10 years, but I see equipment, I see things happening. I have no idea what it is. But the ability to be able to just look at something, right, and have an agent be able to give you information, give you advice, give you instructions. Yeah, that's what's happening. It's super cool example you just shared because
Yeah.
that's exactly the big picture
It's
where
really
it's all going.
fascinating. So, having started this journey, I think I saw that you've been at it for yeah, I mean
14 years with every
14
point.
years. Yeah. So
Hmm.
a lot's changed. I suspect 14 years ago that messaging was difficult to get across and you encountered a lot of resistance, and I imagine that's changed a lot over the years. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you got started in it and the evolution that you've seen?
Absolutely. So I've been around the block a few times through hype cycles and through technology change, right? Coming out of grad school as a computer scientist, it was right when the web was kicking in, right? And HTML and browsers.
Yeah.
So I got to ride that wave of, oh, the world's going to change. Everybody's going to have different jobs. It's a new economy, right? So I've been through that. I've been through mobile, right? When you put that device in the hand of everyone
Yep.
and how that changes things when information is your companion, right? And then now AI, right? So um, these cycles, while they seem like they come out of nowhere to your average person, you see them coming 20 years ahead of time.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're a technologist, you see it. And I remember at AgNexus, I forget who it was, gave the presentation and talked about, hey, when the bag phone was out, who could have imagined the iPhone? And I
Yeah.
raised my hand and I said, I could, because we did. We imagined the world of, the devices hanging on the wall, in your hand, right, laying on the tabletop. We were already building all that in research and development environments in academia, right? It just took 20 to 30 years for the technology to catch up to the vision
Yep.
and to the market to be ready to accept it, right? And so everything that's going on with AI right now, we've been talking about, seeing, and knowing has been coming for at least 20 years. At least 20 years. I mean, I personally have been working with machine learning for, yeah, at least 20 years, right?
Wow.
So you see these things coming and they unfold, and it's all about what I call uh, surfing the trough of disillusionment. If you're familiar with the curve, right, you have the hype cycle,
Yeah.
and that's where all the money comes in, and that's what
Yep.
you read all the headlines on today. And everybody's speculating, and all the new companies pop up.
Yep.
Whether it was the early days of pets.com, right, in the dot
Yeah.
com days, and Webvan,
Yep.
right, if anybody's old enough to remember those things, that's when you're in the hype cycle, right? Then reality kicks in, and the market isn't necessarily ready for that world that the technology community wants to bring to market. And then you hit this big crash where suddenly the revenues don't keep up with the hype and the capital raised, and things crash. And that's called the trough of disillusionment,
Yep.
right? And so it's so important as a company that, yes, you watch the hype cycle, you respect the hype cycle, right? But your real goal is to see, when are we going to reach the peak of the hype cycle? And then when the whole market crashes into the trough of disillusionment, and everybody thinks that AI is always hallucinating and AI is only good for dancing construction site cats,
Yeah.
right? That's when disillusionment hits in.
Yeah.
That's when reality smacks people in the face, and then you emerge with real value-oriented solutions,
Yep.
right? The slope of enlightenment, right, is what we call it. So what you want to do is you want to be surfing, you want to make it through that hype cycle, and then as it starts to crash, you want to take off as a company.
Yeah.
So so that's maybe what people in the mining industry don't appreciate, right? And they get caught up in a lot, is because right now there's a bunch of people in Patagonia jackets knocking on your doors saying, you better put money and capital and resources into AI or you're going to be out of business in
Yep.
3 years, right? And that's the hype cycle. That's
Yep.
just what happens. There's a lot of capital racing to get market share, and they're going to sell whatever fear mongering they can, right, to get you to buy their software or subscribe to their service or whatever. So, lots of times one of the things I enjoy about my job is we started in probably the lowest tech industry of quarrying and rock,
Hmm.
sand, and gravel, right, with this
Yeah.
bleeding edge technology concept. So our customers, there's a great opportunity to help be that translator and say, hey, this is the hype cycle. This is what people are yelling at you all day long. And then this is reality. And here's the timeline that's going to unfold in reality as you go through this traditional hype cycle. So anyway,
Yeah.
it got a little probably off track there, but
No, no,
your
that's really
example of
good.
reading the
Yeah.
Chinese symbol is exactly what we've been talking about and envisioning for 20 years. So the way I got to mining or quarrying or whatever the right words to say are, is we do have this vision of digitizing every point in the supply chain. Yeah, it would be great to do every point on the planet. Maybe we won't get there. Maybe we'll just get to every point in the supply chain. Maybe we'll only get to every pile on the planet, right? But when we were sitting in a bar trying to figure out how do we go into this future, we said, we need to find something that's of high value for people to digitize every second of every day. And the whole first year and a half that I spent of this 14-year journey was looking at all the different problems out there in different industries, from healthcare to travel to entertainment, looking to see how could we take this technology that understands images, understands the semantics of an image, and understands the geometry of an image, and solves a real world problem. And believe it or not, we did some really cool problems. Like we worked with effects industries to shorten the time of developing movies and films. And it was great, but there was no money in it.
Right.
But you got to do some really cool things. We worked with gaming companies on how to create realistic environments like golf courses and football stadiums and this and that. But again, not enough money. And I was looking at mining because somebody introduced me to the field, and I originally started looking at blasting and saying,
Mm-hmm.
hey, if we could model this blast before the blast, you could see all the geometry and some of the semantic understanding of that bench and every place, and you could see the drill hole pattern, right? We could take that understanding, do the blast, and then look at the muck pile and see what was the efficiency of that blast.
Yeah.
Because we were learning that, hey, these big rocks, when the shot doesn't go right and you end up with big rocks, somebody's got to bring some machinery down there and bust that thing up
Yep.
so that it can fit through the plant. And so I was really curious because like that problem looks dangerous, it looks big, and it looks like it could really benefit from it. But worked on that for almost 6 months with some of the big players in the mining industry that you would know the logos of. And then while we were doing that, the president of this aggregates company heard what we were doing and came and said, "Hey, could you take pictures of the actual stockpile and just tell me how much is in the pile?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, yeah, but that's boring compared to this blasting thing, and
Yeah.
that blasting seems a lot more expensive." And then he told me the whole story of how a large bulk materials company every 7 to 10 years has a massive financial adjustment, right? Because
Mm.
everybody would produce and move and make these bulk materials all year long. Remember, this was 12, 13 years ago. There were not drones, there were not things to do. People
Yep.
were doing old school aerial photogrammetry with stereoscopes,
Yeah.
and they were walking on piles with RTK sticks,
Yep.
right? And he says, you can only afford to do a count like twice a year, maybe if you're lucky, right? And he'd say, so what would happen is if you're a publicly traded company, you have to have a third party come in and do your inventory count.
Yep.
And the problem is at the end of the year, they come in to do the count. And he's like, you would just go to church, say your prayers, and come back and look at the results and hope some of your sites were over, some of your sites were under, and it would all kind of work out. And
Yep.
that's kind of how the industry worked, right? And then, but the problem is about every 7 to 10 years, the statistics would catch up, and you would have, instead of half coming in over, half coming in under, they'd all come in over, but they'd all
Yeah.
come in under. And then when that would happen, you would literally adjustments in the range of 500 million, 700 million, like mind-boggling numbers that you could have that big of an adjustment to your financials at the end of the year.
Wow.
Didn't happen often, but it would happen. And so when I learned about that, I was like, well, yeah, now measuring that pile over there seems a lot more important, right, than this plastic thing. And then I called a bunch of other aggregates associations, and that's how I got attached into there. And they're like, hell yeah, that's a problem. That's
Yeah.
exactly what every company faces is you try your best to track your production, to track your sales, to track your movement of materials, and then you have this third party come in and do a count, and it's always chaos.
Yep.
So that's where we said, you know what, before we start answering all the questions about Chinese symbols and books and this and that, let's go solve a problem that helps the real world, that will get us digitizing parts of the planet, right? And so now there's people in 130 countries running around with phones digitizing piles, right, in places on the planet. They're not doing it every second of every day yet, but they're doing it, depending upon the industry and the use case, they might be doing it every couple of days
Yeah.
or once a week now. So it's moving in that direction. So that's
Yeah.
how we got into it. So I still have this bigger vision that I don't talk about very much to move beyond the pile, right? To start looking at the loaders, the haul trucks, the rail cars, all these other things that orchestrate around bulk materials so that we can, from imagery, understand the semantics and the geometry. By semantics, that means, well, what does this thing mean? Right? When I look at this tire on a front loader, what can I tell about that tire? Right? When does it need service? When it might blow out? Right? So that's what I mean by semantics,
Yeah.
the understanding, the meaning of the language, and then the geometry. That's what we do best, is be able to determine accurate three-dimensional data out of pictures. And that's how you end up with a stockpile volume. So that's a long way
Fascinating.
to answer your question, but that's how we got here. Our vision is still, hey, I think it's bang on. I think there will be cameras everywhere on every piece of equipment, on every hard hat, on every pair of safety glasses. That's coming. I think that part of our vision has been right for nearly 15 years. I think making sense of that and helping provide answers and information is bang on. But we still have plenty to do just on this simple problem of how to digitize bulk materials so you can start to automate and optimate. Optimate, that's a new word.
There you go.
Optimize,
Yeah.
how you can start to automate and optimize the bulk materials industry.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you mentioned semantics, and this is a question that Crystal passed along. Um, she mentioned that you had on LinkedIn the other day that there's not a consistency in stockpile terminology in the aggregates
Right.
industry. And I've had this conversation with several people in the industry now that there's no consistency in product names
That's
across
right.
different regions of the United States and the world. And so you can have something that we call 57s that's called number
Hmm.
one somewhere else, or it's called a material or whatever. There's no real consistency. So one of the
Agreed.
tasks that I've actually have AI working on, um, and I have an agent built for it, is actually going around building a large language model that's trained specifically to be able to interpret different types of
Love it.
material. So if I have
Hmm.
57s here, what does that actually mean in this other market, and how is it
So
related?
important.
Because there's no standardization. So I thought that was kind of interesting. You mentioned the, talking about semantics and things. Like, I think that's a good point, that, and
It's
probably a bit of
huge and it
a,
has to happen.
yeah,
You
something
know,
that you see quite a bit, measuring stockpiles.
I do. And again, going back to been around the block a few times, I mean, we're not solving this problem for the first time. It's just that the bulk materials industry has been one of the least digitized industries out there still,
Yep.
right? In construction. So if you look back in history 50 years ago, maybe 60 years ago, you had the same challenges with, things that have barcodes and come in boxes now, right? Everybody had different names of products. So there was this whole era of standardization, right? With professional industry groups that came together, said, and this is where we've had some conversations like, well, why isn't NSSGA or other organizations driving standards? Or which organizations should be driving standards?
Yeah.
And the industry should be coming together and saying these are our standard names, these are our standard codes. Because if the industry doesn't do it, guess who's going to do it? The software vendors,
Yeah.
right? And the software vendors aren't necessarily going to do it the way you want to do it as an
Right.
industry, right? But eventually somebody's going to force some standardization. Because if you look back in history, this great automation we had, that happens at the grocery store and the supply chain feeding the grocery store didn't happen until these EDI standards came about. It's called electronic data interchange or interface. I can't remember,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
boring stuff. That's just some standard ways to name products in a given industry. And the bulk materials industry desperately needs that for products. I personally poked on pile because when somebody takes a phone and they walk out into a distribution yard or a production, they don't go measure a product, they go measure a pile,
Right.
right? And so there's this huge challenge of, well, what boss, what pile do you want me to measure? We got three piles of 57s.
Yep.
Do you want me to do that one over there that's allocated for the DOT, or do you want me to do that one over there that, we're trying to fire sale and get, so everybody has to talk about piles, right? And so, yes, I agree, products is a huge challenge, and Stockpile Reports customers would benefit from standardized product definitions. And I think it's going to be important as we start to integrate the supply chain around bulk materials. But yeah, we have this shorter term problem where nobody has a clue, and it's usually whoever the boss is at the facility comes up with how to name them, which is kind of
Yep.
fun. So some of them give numbers, some of them call them like ex-girlfriends, some of them
Yeah.
call them things at the
The
DOT. Some of them
south
say
pile,
that.
the north pile, the west
Yep,
pile. Yep.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. So the industry definitely has to solve that problem, and maybe AI will help solve it faster, and maybe you'll help solve it with your AI agent you're building.
Yeah. For now, I'm not really pushing for standardization, although it's a baby step, but just a translation guide. These are all
Well, that's
similar
all.
products, and here's the different names.
Yeah, and hopefully AI will make it easier than the old standards committees and EDI spec numbers,
Yeah.
right? And it'll move a little faster than it did,
Yeah.
40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, and before
Yep,
that, 100 years before that, we had just standardizing parts and standardized manufacturing and things like that. Because when everything was handmade, which is kind of similar to where the aggregate industry is now, um, there wasn't interchangeable parts, and then there was a whole revolution that was tied in with the industrial revolution of interchangeable parts, and now we're kind of seeing the same thing, but it's definitely trailing a lot because and I think a lot of that is even in the large national or multinational construction material producers, they think regionally and they think locally in the different divisions. And so
totally.
they don't really they're focused on their own states, DOT specs, the specs of their customers, and they don't think outside of that really at all. And so that's a
Why would
lot of
you?
it is you have
Yeah,
so many silos, even within a region you have a lot of silos.
well, that's what's challenging about this industry. And, please forgive me, I butcher industry definitions and what's mining and what's coring and what's aggregates, but, you know, mining where there's, a limited resource with more engineering and higher dollars involved, it seems like there is, a little more progress on the standardization,
Yep.
automation, and technology side of things. But when you go over into the aggregates or landscape materials or whatever it is, it's a brutal industry to standardize
Yep.
because it is so local, it's hyper local, and the cost to get in the game is so low,
Yep.
right? If you can have a farmer who goes and throws a backhoe into the ground and suddenly they're selling bulk material,
Yeah.
um, it's tough to have technology be a differentiator and start to win that game unless you
Yeah.
start to go at massive scale,
Yep.
right? And you're seeing signs of that. The Heidelbergs and the CRHs and the bigger players are starting to drive, some more competitive business models and pricing models and service models based on standardization that'll eventually people will want to order their pizza or their coffee at Starbucks because it's easy,
Yep.
right? Versus going to the local shop that might have a little better coffee, but they're not as familiar with how to purchase and
Yep.
they know the experience is going to be different. And so the aggregates industry needs that Starbucks experience from somebody to come out and drive that standardization and being able to operate efficiently at scale that your little two-person coffee shop can't pop up and take out Starbucks. So
Yeah.
it's going to be fun.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point between the mining industry and the aggregates industry, and I just view them all as the mining industry, and I'm a little odd in that, and I've taken that approach, um, and it's becoming more common. But when I started, it was people found that odd, but that's all mining. They're taking materials out of the ground and they're sizing them, crushing them to make a product. Kind of a more
Got
big
it.
picture approach, but
Hmm.
the yeah, to start a copper mine anywhere, you need $1 billion, and that's a small one. And
A little
to
different.
start an aggregate quarry, if you've got a $500,000 line of credit, you can do it. You don't need that much, and so there is a lot of that. And in the broader mining industry, copper mining, metals mining is a great example. There's so much international cooperation, like very few
Hmm.
projects.
Hmm.
I'm working on a major copper project right now in Arizona, and I'm helping to update their PEA. And on the call, we have Australians and Canadians and
Hmm.
Europeans, and they've all come together. And because it's such an international thing at that scale, there has to be standards, and we do everything similarly. So we
Yes.
have various NI 43101 and JORC and SK 1300. So we
Interesting.
have various standards, but they're all compatible. They're all very similar. You format the report differently. You do a few different things, but it's very standardized. But in quarrying, it's very different. Yeah.
It's very different. Very,
Especially when you
very
get into like
local. Yeah.
dimension stone or like landscape materials where you
Hmm.
may have a quarry that produces rock that looks different than the quarry down the road that
Hmm.
produces rock. It's really difficult.
Hmm. It's very difficult, but the opportunity is there. And at AgNexus last year, not this year, last year, I gave a talk that I love to give, which is at some point, some bulk materials company, let's say Aggregates, is going to go all in on technology,
Yeah.
right? And this happens in industry too. If you look back over the last 50 years, the pattern happens over and over and over, right? It's just a different industry it gets applied to. But there will be a number five, a number six, a number seven player who just can't compete with number one and number two, right? And it goes back to that, I love the Moneyball movie. It's a little exaggerated, but when you find a CEO who just cannot get to move up because of some constraints, typically financial, eventually when they go all in on technology and automation and optimization, they will change the game,
Yeah.
right? And they will change the game. And I keep talking to executives and I keep watching the industry like, who's going to go first, right? And there's lots of people who make little movements,
Yeah.
right? But there's nobody that's gone all in. And
Yeah.
and I've learned the reason they haven't is because this industry just doesn't have a lot of experience with technology
Yep.
and it doesn't have a lot of resources, but people in their organizations who have experience and confidence in how to roll out technology at scale, right?
Yeah.
Most of them, their last flavor of technology at scale was ERP systems,
Yes.
and
I
that
was
was a
going to say
nightmare.
that. Yeah.
And that was a nightmare. Most of them, if I say the word PeopleSoft or ERP or something out loud, they all have visceral reactions
Yep.
and have horror stories about how 10 years ago they thought it was going to cost them X millions and it ended up costing X plus Y millions, and they're still confused and not not functioning smoothly. So there's a lot of scars out there at large scale technology deployment that eventually someone will get over, and technologies like AI are going to make it easy enough and cheap enough that you can't ignore it anymore. Right. And
Yeah.
somebody will do it. Somebody will do it and they will clean house and then everyone else will have to follow.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. And it probably will be. It's not going to be CRH or Martin Marietta or Vulcan, but it could be like a Luckstone or a Rogers or somebody else, or even, interesting like Quickcrete is private, and so they can do interesting
Private has an
things,
advantage.
and they
Hmm.
could empower one of their like summit, all the summit assets and something like that, and really go all in and actually come
Totally.
out of the blue. And so, but yeah, there's the baby steps. I mean, we saw the
Yeah.
Luckstone
And timing and
Caterpillar
market timing. Yeah.
thing, and then they're coming in and stuff. But yeah, there's not an ERP is a great example. I was actually thinking of that. And there's not even something like that where you can come in and just plug NetSuite into a quarry and solve all the problems. There's a lot of
Right.
little solutions that work really well. And
It's a
perhaps
very
that's
physical
where,
analog business.
yeah,
Yeah.
perhaps that's where AI will come in, is to help be able to cobble together solutions, and they can
Totally.
speak and work together, and you can make that happen. Because I think there's several companies trying to create an all-in-one solution that you could just plug into a quarry that'll handle everything from maintenance to sales and
It's
inventory,
tough.
but it's tough and clunky, and they're not there yet.
Not there yet. But again, use other industries as a guidebook. History teaches us lessons. Same sorts of patterns came out in other industries, one ring to rule them all solutions,
Yep.
that tried to move the industry forward and then, it takes it so far forward, but then it's too tough and clunky and locked, and then some other new technology comes along and so it's all a natural process. So it,
Yeah.
it,
We
it it'll happen,
see
but it's yeah.
We see, yeah,
You know,
that's a great example. We see Google's tried to
yep.
do that several times, and then
Well,
they end up
yeah.
overextending, and then they roll back to where they're comfortable
Yep.
and where they're good, and then they overextend again. Like they tried to get into social media, and they've tried to
Hmm.
really get into business and compete with
Hmm.
Microsoft, and they're just not there. So they end up kind of
Yep.
stepping back, moving forward, and then. But they always end up
Yeah.
retreating to their core competency, which is interesting.
That's right. Well, I'll tell you, AI though also moved our industry backwards. I should the aggregates industry backwards because before all of the money went into AI, private equity and other companies were looking for places to go make money,
Yeah,
right? And there were more and more conversations going on around we need to go after the last remaining under-digitized, underserved industries. Well, guess who was in the crosshairs of that?
hmm
Construction and bulk materials, right? And so there was a lot of conferences, a lot of coffee talks from private equity people looking at making big plays to say, look, we need to go find these last markets that haven't been digitized and digitize them and extract all the money we can out of them. And so before the before the AI boom, there were plays happening to go after sort of disrupting construction and doing it differently. But unfortunately, those didn't happen. And then AI came along, and now every dollar that's available in Silicon Valley and everywhere else is going to AI, right? So I think that probably delayed the disruption of the aggregates industry probably by about 10 years, right? Because there's probably about 10 or 15 years of this AI game to settle out in terms of
yeah,
collecting all the investment dollars to where suddenly people go back to saying, okay, where do we point these dollars into industries that we can disrupt, like we did the movie industry or the healthcare industry or retail, right? Bulk materials is sitting there wide open, ready to be taken by somebody.
yeah. They even
Um,
got into like HVAC and plumbing and electricians
mhm.
and car washes and storage and industrial outdoor
They'll be back.
storage and yeah, but I've never
They'll be
thought of
back.
that, but I was having those same conversations
Hmm.
5 years ago and into the
Totally.
last few years with private equity and even institutional capital in New York, talking to some major players, some big infrastructure funds, and some other big players, and they were all keen and really interested in aggregates. And I had some meetings, and they would come in really interested, hot to trot. Like we're gonna get an MOU signed. We're gonna deploy billions of dollars of capital into the aggregate industry. And our position and my interest was using our mineralocity platform to help them select the best
Oh, fascinating.
undervalued
Hmm.
growth opportunities. And they all backed off in the last couple of years. And I've never really put it together, but I think you just hit the nail on
I,
the head.
I saw it firsthand in the Seattle area, right, with all the big investment groups. That's, where our business is, and so those are the easy places to bump into people at soccer games and other
Yeah.
places who have these conversations. Um, but that absolutely has happened, and I would bet that you were experiencing that the exploration of that investment hypothesis, right, that
Yeah.
they were all talking about, which was let's find underserved, under-digitized industries and go change them. And
Yeah.
so I think again, all the junior associates and everybody were all out there looking for opportunities and deals
Yeah.
that met that pattern. And that was a prevailing, sort of direction for the money people
Yeah.
was finding those under-digitized, underserved industries. And then AI came and it was like, boom, forget that,
Yeah.
rip up that investment hypothesis. We got to find anything and everything that's in the AI world,
Yeah.
right? But
No,
again, this
yeah.
happens. It happens over and over in industries. And so
Yeah.
it might be another 5 or 10 years, but it'll be back. They'll be
Yeah.
back. They'll
Yeah,
be
that
back.
was the angle that we had was using our mineralocity aggregates platform to help them identify those opportunities
Oh, it
and
makes total
places
sense.
that they could be in and it makes sense and it'll still be there in 5 years when it comes back around. But that's interesting how it shifted. But the amount of capital allocated for data center construction right now is mind-boggling. If everyone were to execute on all the plans they've announced publicly, we're looking at about $5 trillion in CapEx over the
Well,
next 5 years.
navigate that hype cycle.
Yeah, it's wild.
Navigate that
And
hype cycle. There'll be a lot of winners, but there'll be a lot of losers.
there's got to
Uh,
be. There's just no
yeah.
way. And I'm seeing, yeah, and it's hitting real estate. It's hitting chip manufacturers. It's hitting energy really
Remember
hard.
fiber optics?
Fiber optics. And
Remember
then,
burying fiber in every place along every roadside in every neighborhood in the height of the
yep.
dot-com days? Kind of feels familiar.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny. Some of those projects that were announced then are just finally getting completed.
Yeah. Well, things take 30 years. I mean, as
Yeah,
much as the people selling things want to scare you and think it's all going to happen in 2 years,
yep,
it'll take 30,
yeah,
right? Things will incrementally change, but to really truly become the future that the visionaries are hypothesizing right now on TV, it's still gonna, maybe it's not, maybe it's 15 to 20 years,
yeah,
right? And yes, AI does give you the ability to move a little faster because you can deal with it in more natural language, so more people can engage with it. But it still takes a while for humans to adapt, humans to change. Um, yeah, it's going to be a little while. I don't think. I guess maybe I'm a little scorned because again, back in the dot-com days, I don't know if you remember the new economy, right? And everybody was on talk shows talking about the new economy and how this is different and everything's going to change much. Yeah, things changed and they changed fast, right? But it didn't live up to the hype cycle at the peak of inflated expectations in those early days of pets.com and Webvan.
yeah,
So we're gonna have the same kind of thing, and there will be some adjustments and some crashes and some data center contracts get canceled and as a technologist, I also know that there will be new technologies that get invented that don't demand as much compute power,
yeah,
right? And things will run on your phone. Everybody's
yep.
counted Apple out. I don't know. I haven't counted Apple out yet. Um, they are an old company, so old companies. We always say elephants don't dance. So maybe they won't. But boy, you sure have a very powerful device in your pocket, palm, or
Oh, it's
purse
amazing. Yeah,
that's capable to do a lot. And how much can be done here instead of a data center,
yep.
right? And I think there will be some technology innovation. There always is that will surprise everyone, and maybe we won't need all those data centers.
We have some new players that we didn't really have before, like China, who are heavily invested in AI and they think very differently. There's a very different um, Chinese thinking is a lot more longer term. They're not as concerned with quarters and annual
Hmm.
reports and things like that. They can think more 5,
Hmm.
10, 15 years. And so we're
Yeah,
seeing with some of these Chinese models, DeepSeek and similar, that they're able to do a lot more with a lot less compute. And so those different players, and I've seen intentions, every country, not every country, but many countries have expressed an interest in being the new hub for AI and the hub for growth
totally.
and data centers. And a lot of them they're not going to be able to compete on pure capex and pure energy consumption and all that, but they may be able to compete really well on creative solutions and coming up with new and better ways to do things. And so I think we'll see a
Totally.
lot more of that, and a
Well, I
lot
wanted
less
to
power.
flash that, right? I mean, how many data centers are being built
Yeah,
to do this all day long,
yeah.
right? Do you have any idea how much energy and how much compute power goes into generating these AI videos, right?
It's
And
mind-boggling. Yeah,
right. And the US companies are all in on that,
yep,
right? So when you look at, well, why are they having to build these data centers so fast? Well, they got to generate more cat videos,
yep.
right? And they've got to generate more stupid text responses, right?
Yeah,
So there is this inflated bit where there's a lot of money being spent on things that might not be creating a lot of value.
a lot of value and,
And
and any real revenue to speak of. That's the crazy thing is those cat videos may cost them 5 cents to produce, and maybe they're collecting a half a cent for that. I
they're
mean,
collecting investment dollars right now is what they're collecting.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there's definitely a lag, and we are definitely in the hype cycle, and the realities where you can smell that there's some questions being asked now, like, okay, Sam Altman, when are you actually going to produce revenue? What's your actual plan? Some of those tough questions are getting asked now, and it's, is it
Yeah,
going to become Uber or Snapchat, where
right.
they come up with
Yeah.
a plan for revenue generation and it succeeds or it fails, and so that's going to
Well,
be really interesting to see.
yeah. The other historical lesson to learn that I always say and tell people is it's never who's first, it's who's last.
Yep.
Right. And if you look back through all these eras of innovation, there were always lots of very bright burning stars that were first,
Yep.
right? That seemed like there's no way they could be dethroned.
Yep.
There's no way they would disappear, right? And then eventually, as things mature, yes, the right user experiences, the right business models, the right timing, right? Other players come out of nowhere and win. And so, I have no clue. The fog of innovation is thick. When you're in it, you can never predict who's going to win.
Yeah.
But just based on experience, if history proves right, the winners will potentially be people we haven't even heard of yet.
Yeah.
My favorite is the phone. I mean, remember the world of Nokia and BlackBerry,
Oh
and
yeah.
you couldn't even think of anything else, and people would laugh when there were rumors that Apple was going to have an iPod phone,
Yep.
right? And oh, you'll never take down Nokia,
Yep.
right? And the iPhone, most people don't know, it wasn't so much, yes, it had a great technology shift and change, but it was the business deal that Apple pulled off with AT&T that was really
Yeah.
what drove it. It was the fact that back in the day, and I used to work in the telecom space, if you wanted to release a mobile phone or a mobile app, you had to go down to these grumpy engineers at Verizon and AT&T and T and whatever and beg them to support your app on their network or support your device.
Yeah.
And trust me, they were grumpy and they would love rejecting more than they would accept. And they always said it wasn't secure or it put too much load on the network or privacy was a big issue, and they would always have reasons to reject people. And then Apple comes along and says, hey, let's do this deal where we put the phone on your network, but you get zero approvals on what happens on the phone. You get zero approvals about the app, the data load, which device we release, and that changed the world,
Yeah.
right? If Apple hadn't knocked down that barrier of those gatekeepers from the cell phone providers, we'd still be using Nokia and BlackBerry phones,
That
right?
initial
So yes,
presentation
the,
must have been a hell of a presentation to the AT&T
oh,
execs.
well, he went around to every carrier. Steve Jobs went around and, he knew the terms he wanted
Yeah.
and went around and eventually convinced, somebody to go first. And so, that's what happens. I mean, yes, technology is great, but it will be the business models, it will be the user experience, and it could be players that we don't even know yet or we don't even expect. Um, yeah, so it's going to be fun. It's
Yeah.
going to be fun.
It is fun.
Luckily, my mission is clear. I want to digitize every pile on the planet every second of every day, and there's not many people who share my passion and enthusiasm for digitizing rocks. So we don't see a lot of attention in that market space now,
Yeah.
but
No,
there
it's
will be
important
eventually.
work. Yeah, it's important work. And having worked in the industry and had my own share of struggles with understanding stockpiles and inventory, I see the value immediately. Um, I've gone to plenty of sites and said, they're producing excess fines. I worked on a project in Louisiana and they were producing a lot of fines. And they said, well, the fines are great for flume sand and you can make frac sand with them. And I said, well, that's great. Maybe we should market that, see if there's a buyer, somebody will want it. How many tons do you have? Look out the window. Half a
Yep.
million tons. It's like, well, do we have any data around that? And they're like, no, that's just what I was told by the previous operator. And they were told by the previous operator. And then they've added to it. And then they took some and then they added to it. And it's like, so this was years ago. If I'd known about your solution, I would have absolutely deployed that. But we went out and brought out a drone pilot and flew it and measured it once. And then since then, of course, the pile's grown and shrunk and grown and shrunk. We have no idea
Yep.
what's out there. But Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good mission and it's important and it's exciting.
Well, I think, again, I'm lucky that I've been around the block a few times because I am surfing the trough of disillusionment, right? And what's really exciting is what you can do when every pile in your supply chain is digital,
Yeah.
right? This determining volumes and inventories, it's people have to do it. They don't want to do it. They'd rather make rock than measure rock, right?
Yep.
That's the world we're
Absolutely.
in
Yeah.
now. But eventually, once you have all the piles in the supply chain, right, from the pit to the plant area to a distribution yard to a rail yard to the actual job site, and you've got all of that data connected, now you can start to drive automation and optimization. Right
Yeah.
now, you see, wait a minute, that pile is being consumed at the construction site. And now that data talks to all the other data and goes, oh, well, guess what? At the rail distribution yard that fills that construction site, we're going to need 7 rail cars loaded tomorrow, right?
Yep.
And then, oh, then that data can talk back to the production plan and say, oh, in about 3 weeks, we're going to need more data to load on trains to go there, right? And so instead of it being, I always call it beer bellies and thumbs, right, running the
Yep.
industry
Yep.
to actual automation and optimization. So it's the end game is about having all of these piles digitized so that you can start to build these smart workflows and smart automations on that data. People are trying to do that right now. They're trying to optimize dispatch. They're trying to
Yep.
automate orders and production planning,
Dynamic
and they
pricing. Yeah. Lots of
they
things.
can to
Yeah.
a degree, but the dirty secret, and I can tell dirty secrets, is that your average aggregates inventory is off easily 12 to 18%. Okay.
And
Um,
that's at the big guys who are running pretty well. On the real small operations, that those numbers are higher. Yeah, a lot
okay, so
higher.
here's another one. So DOTs, you want to take a guess?
DOT's 30%,
40.
40. Wow.
Can you imagine running any other type of business where your key asset that you're working with, selling, consuming, or using, that you're off 40%?
Wow.
Imagine trying to sell television sets. Imagine trying to run a grocery store,
It's
right?
wild.
It's just, you can't do it, right?
Yep.
So the problem is people go, oh, I saw this great AI truck optimization software. Great, let's go roll it out. Well, they start rolling out and they go, well, wait a minute, the truck just showed up over there and there's nothing to pick up.
Yeah.
Well, the inventory system said that there was still 10,000 tons of that material there. Well, guess what? There's nothing there. Well, where did it all go? Well, it's because there was error in the inventory. Well, why is there error in the inventory? Right. And the reality is there's always going to be error in inventory because your damn product changes if it rains or not.
Yeah.
Right. And and so you have to have frequent good data on these assets if you want to drive automation. So to me, that's the exciting part is, and people aren't excited yet. They don't necessarily get excited about our vision. Oh, let's call those guys at Stockpile Reports because we had a write-off and we don't want to think about inventory. Just it'll make the bean counters happy.
Yeah.
That's most of the phone calls we get today. But I can tell you 5 years from now, we're going to be getting the, hey, we're trying to use AI to optimize our production or optimize our sales forecasting or optimize this. And it doesn't work
Yeah.
because our data is wrong. And then we say,
Garbage in,
oh, guess
garbage
what?
out. Yeah. That's foundational data that's key to build every other system on top of. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So piles are boring. But what you can do with, the pile data is going to be exciting.
Yeah. No, it's been
Yeah.
really great. I appreciate having you on and great conversation as always.
Yeah. No, I got a little wound up on piles and this and that, but hopefully that was good, useful information and discussion about where the industry's at, the hype cycles with AI, how people in mining navigate it. It's not easy. It's never easy, no matter what industry you're in.
Yeah.
Just don't be sold a bill of goods by a bunch of people in Patagonia jackets.
Yep.
Uh, and just, always know that we're in a hype cycle, and behave appropriately. Do your experimentation, do your pilot projects, do things, but know that you're going to be going all in probably in another 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
Um,
Makes
but yeah,
sense.
so people in mining need to keep that in mind when it comes to AI.
Very cool. Well, thanks for joining me today.
You bet. Anytime.
I really
Always happy to
appreciate
do
it.
it. All right.
All
Have a good
righty.
day.
See ya.